Can we sit down, please? Uh, this is the first time we're doing this at such a scale where a lot of people have flown in. The whole team is there post-COVID. A big chunk of us are here. And given that this is one of the, hopefully one of the first few such events, and we'll try to have one every quarter. We are trying to do a segment every quarter now. And today, hopefully, will mark the first episode of that segment. And that's called ACKO On Air. And we will have these fireside chats with very smart people. It could be investors, could be founders, could be industry folks. And who better than our first investor for our first episode? So a big round of applause for the lovely folks from Accel who've made time to come here in all the evening traffic and giving us an opportunity to hear their thoughts. So without further ado, and as soon as you guys can settle down, we'll have Subrata and Abhinav on stage. Please join us. Huh? No, I am not sitting in the middle. You are the boss. I don't know that.
Hello.
Okay. So first we'll start with introductions. And I was just 5 minutes ago given a great idea by Subrata that Abhinav will introduce Subrata and Subrata will introduce Abhinav. So can we have the introductions, please?
This is because it looks like you guys are used to playing games.
Yeah.
And that's what Varun told us. You know, he had all these questions that you got all right. So maybe we should have asked you to introduce us, but we'll do it a little easier. So I'll go first. So Abhinav Chaturvedi, I'm sure a bunch of people may have seen him in your offices pre-COVID. Any show of hands? Some. Very small. So more of you need to meet with him. And so Abhinav is a partner at Accel, and he has been at Accel for now more than 10 years. He looks young, but he's not that young. But his claim to fame is, whenever you ask him with passion, and this used to get asked during our fundraising conversations, when we go out to raise our funds, he would talk about a company called Urban Company. Who all knows about Urban Company? So he is the first investor in Urban Company. And when an investor would ask him, talk about, so our claim to fame is we are early stage investors and we have been with companies from start to finish. So for Abhinav, it will be this 3 people room where he had to ask one of the guys to step out for him to step in to have a conversation with the other 2 founders. So that's how small we start with, and that's Abhinav for you. Outside of the fun and games, he is actually an alum of Harvard. And he loves hiring other Harvard alums. I keep telling him, I'm so lucky that I came before you, because if you were hiring, I'd never make it to Accel. But that's Abhinav.
Thanks, Subrata. Well, Subrata's introduction can be very long. So Subrata started Accel in India. And so he's basically, why at least I exist. And what I do is largely because of his idea. At some point in time, he decided that he was bored enough to do what he was doing and start a fund. And he looks young, and he is young. And Subrata's claim to fame are many. Of the many, he is the first investor in this company called Flipkart, where he invested $800,000 for. Where he invested $800,000 for 25% of the business. And this is obviously at a time when nobody knew what Flipkart...
You have to get lucky, and it's better to get lucky early on than later in your career.
I wish all of us can get lucky like that. So 800,000 for 25%, and not just that, he's invested in Flipkart, he's invested in Myntra. He was the first investor in, back in the days, there was this large company still now, Mu Sigma, Mensa, ACKO, lots and lots of, large category-defining businesses in India. I have the fortune of working with Subrata for the last decade or so, and the great fortune has been that I found a great teacher in somebody as Subrata. So thank you, and you'll hear, you'll know what I'm saying when you hear him talk.
Thank you. I'm blown away.
So should we start? Okay. So I know both Subrata and Abhinav since 2014. Yeah, 2014. They've been the first investors in my first company, which was CoverFox, and the first investors in ACKO. So big thank you to them personally from me. But so we've heard about so I'll start with the first question, which is for both of you, in any order. We now know that what you've been doing in the VC business from the introduction. What were you doing before that, and how did Accel come about separately for each one of you?
So I'll keep it short. Okay. I was actually running a services company here in Bangalore called Tavant Technologies. Anybody from there? No. Oh, one guy. Yeah. And we rode the wave of, the mortgage wave in the US, and the company became rather big very quickly and got acquired. This is 2004. And when I also happened to have bumped into Prashant, who's the other founder of Accel. So two of us, we were kind of thinking about what to do. And we wanted to start a company because we were entrepreneurs. Both he and I were entrepreneurs from before. So we wanted to start a company, and the company that we were thinking about was in the analytics space. And it so happened that this gentleman, Dheeraj Rajaram, the founder of Biosigma, got introduced to us towards the end of 2004 by a common friend, Ashish Gupta of Helion. So we spoke with Dheeraj, and what he was proposing to build was probably at least 50+% overlap with what we were thinking. And then Prashant and I said, this guy is 10 years our younger. Maybe we don't want to co-found a company with this guy. Maybe we should just be investors with him. And that's when my investing charter kind of started. Very quickly, we went from being angel investors to being a small fund called Erasmic. And that was formed in 2005. The most well-known company in that fund was Myntra. And then by 2008, we actually decided to join hands with Accel, and the whole team, which is 4 of us, we moved over and became Accel in India. So that's sort of my story, and Abhinav, you can.
Yeah. My quick story is I used to work with this company called Amazon.com, joined as a software engineer. Very quickly, I realized that I was a very bad engineer, and which was a great recognition because, I realized that I don't want to do this for a long term. And 2 years in, I went and spoke up to the VP there, and, I told him that, this is the young in you thinks you are invincible, so you can go and talk to the VP in Amazon. And VP in Amazon is a fairly senior position. So I walked up to him and told him that, hey, I would like to be a product manager at the company. And so he laughed at me, and he said, of course, we can't do that, and you need to go and do an MBA, and then we can hire. And, but then I asked him, so if I do an MBA, then what would you do? He said, you'll take an interview. And I laughed at him, and I said, why don't you take my interview then? And he, of course, brushed it away and asked me to sort of, go away in some sense, in a nice way. But while walking away, it doesn't end. While walking away, I told him that, if there's an opportunity, you should think about me. And so it did. I mean, so it's 3-4 months down the road, he came up to my desk and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity, and would you like to be considered for it?" I said, "Of course, yes." And so one thing led to the other. I became a PM, and PM in Amazon is like you do product management, you do program management, you do bunch of stuff like whatever other people don't want to do. And for 1 year, I really enjoyed the thing, and then it became a very large company. I was thinking that I was just doing email management, navigating internally, etc. And like all confused people, I ended up at a business school, and at business school, I figured out there is something called venture capital. And after asking people what do venture capital people do, I figured out there is people who've been in tech product but understand business a little bit can be a good fit there. And I thought, oh wow, this is me. And then I met Subrata and Prashant and other people at Accel. And one thing which definitely clicked me was, I would love to work with these people. While I had no clue about venture capital in India, because at that point, I think nobody really knew what venture capital really was. So came back to India and joined Accel in 2012, and I've been here for a decade now.
Good stuff. I have a follow-up question on that one. First, I'll go with you, Subrata. So, when Erasmic Accel happened, why did you decide to join hands with Accel and not continue independently?
And it's a combination of things. So I think that was a time when multiple US firms were looking at India. So there was Greylock scouting around, there was Accel, there was another firm which doesn't exist anymore called Austin Ventures. At least these three, and there may be Sierra, so there were 4 of these groups. And they came and told us that it'll be so much nicer to work with one of these really branded firms. So why don't you think about it? And sort of that was one side of the story. The second side of the story was we had raised only $10 million as Erasmic. And because in those days, raising money was hard work. And off the team, I'm the only US citizen. So Prashant and Mahindran would put me on a flight and at a day's notice say, go talk to this guy and figure out why they should invest into Erasmic. So I had done it once too often, and then by the time we were trying to raise our second fund, 6 months into it, we had only about 50% commitment of the total amount that we wanted to raise. And at that time, 3 or 4 of these funds came and told us, join hands with us and we'll kind of take care of that for you. So we said, might as well do it. And of the 3 or 4, our little bit of research, and then I was in the Valley before, asked a few friends, and they all pointed to saying Accel is tier 1, so might as well go with them. So that was kind of the quick background.
So, awesome decision in hindsight. But yeah, of course, I don't know how many of you know Accel sort of globally is one of the best tech portfolios in the world. So by legacy, we get that. So Abhinav, for you, I've heard some stories. So it's a anecdotal thing. I don't know how many of you know. I also vaguely know that Abhinav was at Amazon with Sachin and Binny Bansal at the same time. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So while they were working at Amazon, so was he, and they overlapped. So could you share some interesting stories around that time?
Are you suggesting that they made too much money and I am here, talking to you guys?
Maybe.
Yeah. No, so we did, and it was a great time actually at that point. Now, it was a very small team in Amazon, about 20 odd people. I was part of this team called Amazon Payments, and maybe Amazon was setting up an office in India. It was early days, and it was while frugality is a core value at Amazon. These were the days when you could go for lunch, breakfast, or dinner to a Leela Palace and still not be penalized for it. Right? So those were the days. So very early days in Amazon India history. Amit Agrawal, who runs Amazon India, was our boss who's running this show. And Sachin, Binny, I, and a bunch of other people, we were part of the same team. Actually, I can tell you one story. And this is a good story about Sachin. There are lots of bad stories also. But I'll tell you the good story. So, and this is, we were trying to release a payments product, and this product was built on APIs. I mean, the APIs is for the other people. These are like programming interfaces which you push out and people will use. But anyway, long story short, we were trying to release a product, and the product had been delayed for a year already. Okay, so it wasn't like it was not going out fast anyway. And we had finally figured out a date.
And that's a good story.
That's a good story. Wait for the good story. It has ups and downs, but that's a good story. So we had figured out a date, and just 2 weeks before the release, and this is like, we have really worked hard for it. We figured out that when you run these test cases, and I'm assuming you guys know, before any release there is a test case to be run, we would figure out that the system went black, or like it will just shut down, and everything was an internal server error for some time. So there was no response to customer requests for an extended period of time. And we couldn't figure out the mystery of this for like days. And then, basically Amit Agarwal, who was our boss, he said, we can't release the product because Amazon ships the code which is 99.999% available. So we can't release. And then, we had an argument that why can't we release it, because we've been waiting for this a year and so. But eventually the thing was, you have to fix this to release this. So there was a squad team, and everything was formed, and we sat, and nobody could figure out like what's really happening. We had no clue what was happening, because arbitrarily this thing we'll just see blackouts in the system. And then Sachin Bansal came like one day, and he started in the morning, and we all sat basically with him, but like we all went home because there was, we had to go to the pub at the evening and like do our stuff and all that. But he sat through the night, and he sat through the next morning, and in the afternoon, he figured out there was this system call which was happening in some part of the code. I don't know where it was. And he just commented that system. A system call is a call which goes through like an operating system and can block the processing which is happening. He commented that line in like millions of lines of code. He found that line is, he commented. And then he ran the system after that in the next night. He's not slept. He ran the system, and then he messaged the team that, it's fixed.
And how many hours straight was this?
This is probably like 48 hours work. Like without fail, like he's just being at it. And we were in the pub or something. Like we got this email like, okay, somebody has fixed it.
Yeah, you were drinking on his behalf.
Okay, next question for you, Subrata, and continuing with Sachin and Binny and Flipkart, and part of my question, Abhinav, you gave away. But some of us are vaguely aware that you wrote the first 5-6 crore check. I don't know what in dollar conversion rates was it at that point.
It wasn't that big.
No, it wasn't that big. And that was for 25% of one of the largest outcomes India has ever produced.
Yeah.
Firstly, let me say, killer deal.
I wish I knew, and then I would have never sold anything, prior to the last minute. But
How did that happen? Can you just give us an account of that time? And what went through your mind? What gave you the conviction? And it's just such a legendary story.
I mean, it's a long story because it took us almost like probably a couple months to decide. So the first part of the story is, with Abhinav, there was this guy, Abhishek Goyal, who currently runs this company called Traction. So he was an associate with us at Accel, and he knew, obviously, he had worked with Sachin and Binny. So he gave raving reviews without telling me of this code fix. But overall, he said that, these are some of the sharpest guys that you can actually work with. And that sort of already gave us a little bit of a head start in terms of, the team part of what we are looking for. But the real insight for me started coming because in those days, you could kind of interact with a company for weeks and weeks and yet not have to commit to write the check yet. And Sachin and Binny were so nice that 3 times a week after finishing their work in the evening, they would come over to our office and kind of talk about what they were doing. And almost every time they came over, there was like a little bit of improvement that they would talk about. Today I fixed something which required me to go talk to my distributors. And because they didn't have systems, I actually built a little piece of software for them so that from tomorrow I can order an email as opposed to having to call them. Right? So every day it was like, or at least every week, there was this little new thing that was happening, which gave us this sense that these two guys were not only just committed to the cause, but they were like incrementally getting this thing better. And of course, Sachin being Sachin, his whole thing was, I'll create a company that will give Indian consumers a level of customer satisfaction that they have never really seen. And that really kind of stuck with me for all the years that we were in Flipkart. And here was this one guy who used to think customer first all the time. There could be a lot of fires in the company, there could be a lot of challenges, but he will stand up and say, just like this situation that Amazon never lets a, bad code to be shipped, he would stand up and say, are my customers going to come back and tell me that I really did the best I could do for them? And that became the bar with which we kind of, continued to build Flipkart. But in those days, the valuation itself was, I wouldn't say it was like too low either, because I wrote the first check in Myntra, and that was like $100,000 for 10%. And I wrote the first, it was like just less than, it was 9% for $100,000. And the first check in Musigma, where we were a small part of it, but the first check happened at 1 million post-money. So there were already, enough and more good companies being funded at that 1, 2, 3 million kind of USD kind of numbers. And this was 25% for $800,000. And at that time, dollar would have been like 41, 42 rupees.
40 bucks.
Yeah.
So this is like roughly 3.5 crores.
3.5 crores.
That's insane.
And that must have returned, that 800K would have returned 700 million. And we put a little bit more money later, and then Myntra merged. All of that happened. But this piece, if you take it in isolation, would be between 7 to 8.
Did you ever try to calculate the IRR?
Why, man?
Super stuff, but I think for all of us much younger in the startup ecosystem than Flipkart, I think Flipkart's been that one school where we kind of, I don't think anybody in the Indian ecosystem really knew that product managers, what do they do, and it's just been like a school for a lot of us. So big thanks for the check that you wrote many years ago. I'm going to change topics to something maybe more recent, and again for both of you, maybe Abhinav, if you can go first. How, according to you, has the tech ecosystem changed in the last 5 years? And please, according to you, share both the good and the bad aspects.
See, quite a bit. In 2012, I mean, maybe I'll take a 10-year view. So in 2012, when I came back, I had just gotten married, and my in-laws thought, isko job nahi mila US mein, so he has come back here. And they had basically, obviously told their friend circle that this guy has gone to such a good business school, so he'll come back as if I'm going to be Ambani or something. But I've come back to India, and they have absolutely no idea what my job is. My father had worked in bank all his life, like one place all his life, and he's well aware of sort of lending to companies and assessing companies and lending to companies. And making money off it, right? And when he asked me, how do you assess? And I said, basically flip a coin, we give money, and there is nothing to assess in the company anyway. So he was like, there's nothing happening here. This is 2012. We would almost like figuratively sit under a banyan tree, hope for a good founder to come in, and a quarter will go by and we'll not see a good founder. So those were the days in 2012. In fact, our fund, in that day when that fund was about a $150 million fund, it lasted almost 3 years, right? So it had like a 3-year window in which we can deploy $150 million. Fast track it to today, we see at least 1 or 2 great founders every week. So much so that if we won't invest, we know that somebody else would invest. We invest that 150 odd million in almost maybe like in sub 2 quarters now. Like that's the pace. So 3 years, that's like 12 quarters become 2 quarters, right? That's the pace we are going at. And my in-laws have been educated by the Shark Tank, so they don't ask me what I do anymore. They're like, they actually like extol my virtue that this is the guy who's doing stuff, right? So it's become mainstream,
They didn't ask you why you are not on Shark Tank.
No, I think they know I'm not going to be on Shark Tank. But it's gone mainstream. I think, more seriously, I think the startup ecosystem, investing, working in startups has become mainstream now. And therefore, in fact, now I would say if you're not in this ecosystem, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing, in some sense. So this is the place to be, and most of the talent density is here. And this is where we see most of the talent coming as well. Right? So things have changed quite dramatically. It has also become more real now. There's been a lot of talk about money coming into the ecosystem without any return. In the last few years, we've seen real dollars being returned. So the cycle has come to a real fruition where it's not a place where money only goes in, the money also comes out. Shubhda, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of, so 2012, and let's say, we have been around from 2005. Erasmic. So the sort of the relative sizes of our fund kept on increasing fairly rapidly. So it went from 10 to 65 to 175 when Abhinav joined us, and then maybe 350 and then 450 and so on. But roughly every 3 years, right? So that's sort of the duration after which we would raise a new fund. And every time we go out to raise a fund, we'll actually have a pitch deck. Now, I remember the Erasmic pitch deck, which is where we envisioned that a lot of the stuff that were happening would look like Mu Sigma. We had this whole thing saying that India is good at services, and now, tech-enabled services are coming in, so we'll probably invest a lot of this fund into tech-enabled services. But it so happened that we probably did only one, and most of the companies were actually tech companies. And this is, I'm talking about 2005. But it took us 3 years to find, there were 14 companies in that fund, took us 3 years to find those. And then, a little bit further down the road, I think by the time this fund 3, which is when Abhinav joined us, we started talking about this, the China equivalence. And we would talk about, China, I think at that time was per capita GDP was about $3,500. And I'm sure all of you know, 15 years before that, India and China were roughly the same size, right? So they had crossed this 3,500, and we were still, I think, $1,900, if I remember right. And a lot of people would talk about this fact that at 3,500, the consumer economy, the disposable income becomes real, and a lot of the consumer companies coming online will start seeing good traction. And then, if you look at today, we talk about, maybe 800-900 million Indians having smartphones, and 90% of those are data connected, at least. And to compare, most of the early Flipkart orders would come during lunchtime because people would actually order from the office. And today, it's 24/7. And not only Flipkart, there are hundreds of services that you can avail today. And a normal smartphone probably has 50 of these apps where we didn't even know what an app was. So obviously, a lot of things have changed on the accessibility side. I think where India still hasn't done really well is on sort of this disposable income dimension. So we are still probably at 2,500, that kind of dollar denominator. And part of it is, that 42 has gone to 80. So that purchasing power has not really spiked. So hopefully this 7-8% growth now takes us there very quickly. And therefore, I would say, a lot of the prime time is yet to come.
Interesting stuff. So none of you commented on what's the bad stuff that's happening in the ecosystem. So maybe 2 points there, and then we'll move to the next question.
I mean, maybe the only bad stuff I can think of is overfunding.
We don't think it's bad.
That creates, again, Flipkart probably got overfunded. So there was this time when we were the first, probably the only company at that point to have raised $1 billion in one round, right? And then very quickly after that, we raised another $1 billion because there was just so much money chasing us. I think if we did not raise the second billion, our first billion would have lasted till, the Walmart round happened, right? And because we raised the second billion, we needed another 3 billion more before we get to the Walmart round, right? So I think it's just human nature. When you get a lot more money than what you need, you probably try to create experiments that, are not reasonable. Right? So I would say overfunding is not necessarily a great thing. And it's probably impossible to fund it just right.
Yeah.
So slight amount of overfunding is probably okay. But if you are like 3x overfunded, you'll probably waste the money.
I think just like a different point of view is, see, overall, if you see a broad sweep of things, I mean, things have been rather, jolly well in India, right? And there's this book by Naipaul called Indian A Million Mutinies, if I get the title right, in which there's this nice thought which says, you can call something good or bad, which is all fine, but the most important thing is motion, Things should keep moving. It's okay, up and down is okay. And I think that's the thing with India. I mean, if you have so much happening, there's bound to be something nice and something wrong. But the more important stuff is there is, you come to India, you feel the vibe here, right?
The energy.
Energy. There are places in the world where you go and, they're exactly the same the way you left them a decade ago, right? So, that's my perspective.
Yeah. I was just sharing this anecdote with somebody. My brother just moved to Europe, and it took him 45 days to get an internet connection.
It took me 30 days to get my first phone connection in Bangalore in 1998 when I moved here.
Yeah, but this is 2022 in Berlin.
I know. So they're still stuck in 1998.
Yeah.
Or probably earlier.
Okay, shifting gears to ACKO, Abhinav, this question is for you. At the time, back in 2016, you probably wrote the largest seed check, if I'm not mistaken, that Accel had ever written. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think I'll just correct the question. Accel wrote the largest first check, not just me. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I'm talking about Accel.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that was the largest seed check in 2016, and that was to ACKO. And probably at that time, it was one of the largest, or probably the largest seed round, which was 30 million.
Yeah.
And I remember you guys underwrote a third of that round,
Yes.
Which was 10 million. We did not have a license. We did not have a business plan. We did not have a team. So tell us, why did you do something like that?
Irrational exuberance.
Yeah, what were you smoking? What were you smoking? I don't remember, man.
And I don't even remember taking you out to a pub.
Yeah. See, I think there is no real reason to do what we did, to be honest. Outside of the...
And for the record, he says that for everything. Okay? So don't feel bad.
One thing we knew, like at that point, I'll tell you, so at least my way of investing, and Subrata can talk about, his, and I think my way will be very similar to his because I've learned from him. I think at least I invest in people who are building something meaningful. So if you see that, if you just sort of unpack that, we have partnered with Varun in 2014 to build a distribution layer on the insurance sector. And during that phase, while the company was doing fine, Varun thought that we were creating a business which was in an industry where the products are really bad. This distribution layer was trying to accelerate selling of bad products. And he thought that if we have to really change this industry meaningfully, then we have to create a business which manufactures good products. And that sounded right. It also sounded right that if you manufacture good products, then it can be a very large outcome as compared to incrementally increase the speed or increase the velocity of selling bad products. So that's on like, can you build something large? And we had worked with Varun, and we figured out that getting business off the ground and building a meaningful execution team, hiring the right person, we were completely sold on that. So we had some experience on that. So actually, there was very little doubt in my head, Varun, why we should not invest in the company. And to be honest, it was a large round, but Varun had suggested a way out for us. So it became easier. So you want to suggest, you will tell, or I'll tell. Okay, I'll tell. So it was a structured investment in the sense that some part of the money needs to be invested upfront, and most of the capital will come in once we get the license. So it was actually not, like, it was very little for us to lose. It was almost a no-brainer investment in somebody we knew, trying to create something which is very meaningfully. And if this were to come true, this would meaningfully change the insurance industry. Shubhda, you want to add?
Largely very similar thought process. We had already worked with Varun for 2-3 years, given that intersection of understanding of the domain and being tech first, we really liked what we saw, and therefore that one checkbox was actually very, very important. I think we had seen parallels of things like this, what you guys are building now at ACKO, work very well in other geographies. So that's another checkbox which somehow investors always look for known parallels or known comparables. So that checked out. And I think we had all sort of gone through this journey of trying to renew our insurance and literally somebody walking up and selling you something that you don't want. And how do you kind of take control of that, both in terms of the customer need and satisfaction, as well as giving them really what they should have? Because sometimes the need could be a little bit esoteric, but can you really build a product that kind of matches to their need and yet be able to handhold the customer and get them to understand that this is the right thing for me at this point of time? So I think there were 2-3 of these aspects, but early stage investing is largely about the team in the end. So do you like the founder? Do you think whatever road bumps are going to be out there, they'll be able to navigate better than anybody else in a similar company? And that's what we thought Varun could do.
We need to thank Ruchi here, who did all the structuring in the beginning to make it risk-free for the investors and also figure out how the licensing and so on and so forth would work. But a big round of applause for Ruchi here. Okay. What do you think are, and this for both of you, what do you think are ACKO's biggest strengths and also our biggest weaknesses?
Yeah, I think the biggest strengths, I think biggest strength is the opportunity, firstly. I mean, it's more sort of, a lot of companies operate in this zone where, there is incremental innovation and there is only so much you can do. In this case, the canvas is really, really wide, and there is a real shot to become that really category defining consumer internet insurance company, like the direct-to-consumer insurance company. So it's a very wide canvas which is available, which is in itself an opportunity because it's not available to most businesses. And the fact that you have a license, which most people don't have, provides that capability to go after these opportunities in general insurance and hopefully in life as well. I think the other strength I would say is over time we have built a really, really kick-ass team, and you should applaud yourselves, please. And it's an iterative process of building out the best team, and so that's the biggest strength. I think the weakness, and it's not really a weakness, but I think there is something which I would maybe, if you allow me, Varun, I would throw it as an opportunity going forward, which is how do we create ACKO as the go-to destination for anybody who wants to work in, say, Bangalore? I mean, because Bangalore is the main place where we are right now, or in India. Like, how do we make this the best place for people to make their careers? I think that's where we want to get to. And in some sense, if this question is there in my mind, it also means that we are not there yet fully.
Sure.
So that's maybe, if you call it a weakness, but it's an opportunity for us to get there at that position. And it's not just Varun's mandate. I think it's all of us' mandate, which is, team leaders, managers, individual contributors, everybody. So how do we make this a best place to work? And this requires active participation from all of you to make this the best place to work in India.
I think we've got miles to go on our, how we're perceived as a place to work, how we're perceived as an employer, and I don't know whether it'll quickly, meaningfully change, but committed to doing that, and we've just got on board our first sort of senior leader to kind of build an employer brand. We have Pramod, if you can say hi. He's our CHRO who has just joined us. So we've been functioning almost like we need X amount of people to hire, to ship code, to sell, and to handle regulations and so on and so forth. But we've just not gotten off that treadmill of actually just here and now. I think right now we've just off late started investing deeply into how do we build people's careers, what are the lateral opportunities we can give them, how can they learn more, how can we raise the bar of the talent that works at ACKO. So that just started, but I think that's fair feedback, and hopefully with Pramod sort of spearheading it, all of us can contribute and make that happen. Subrata, this question is for you. You've invested in some of we've heard lots of the names, a lot of like really top quality names.
Thank you.
What are the key fundamental values that you feel you've seen across these companies which have made some of your best bets in terms of these have been the most resilient companies? What are the values that you've seen consistently that these are the companies which eventually are resilient?
Just to set a benchmark, I would say 40% of the companies I have picked, I think will be, reasonably good, and maybe half of those will be really good. So it's not like we are picking winners only all the time, right? So that's maybe let's get that out of the discussion. But in the end, I think just half an hour ago we were sitting upstairs and we were talking about early stage versus later stage investing, and now Accel, we do both. We have created a growth and leaders practice. So these are different because when you are getting to a company that is at, let's say, your stage today, there are a bunch of metrics, and we were talking about somebody doing a 200-page report on why a new investor should invest into ACKO, and there is that much data to be crunched and to be digested. To take that call, right? So you can, and you may still decide not to invest for various reasons, but there is that much information that you can collect that will help you to either decide whether you want to take the call or you don't want to take the call. Whereas when we came in, and when I came into all these companies that we talked about, we were generally the first checks in all of these companies. So I would say, I look for founders who are not only, various dimensions of it, but in the end, founders who have a great learning curve. So given a challenge, they will actually be able to logically figure out, how to create solutions for that challenge. And like I said, we don't always get it right, but to the extent that we can figure out, these are great people, they have some understanding of either the domain or tech or marketing or product that will move the company forward. Plus, these are people who, when challenged, will actually rise up to the occasion, not only by figuring out a solution, but making that solution better than the best in class today, right? So can we make that assessment going in? And then the other part, of course, is this a person that you can spend 10 years of your life working with? Because a lot of the companies in India takes 10 plus years to get to fruition. So are these the people that you can call middle of the night, or they can call you middle of the night, and either party is going to enjoy that conversation for this good 10, 12 years that we have to work together. So largely it is those two dimensions. And then of course, are we in a market that makes sense, right? So maybe that's the third dimension that you have to look at.
This is a fairly sort of, if I may pardon my language over here, but it's a fairly nebulous, not objective framework. A lot of assessment involved. So is Abhinav, a follow up to you? So are there frameworks you developed to kind of just make this more objective? Just whatever Subrata said.
Yeah, I think largely, see, it's a more of an art form in the early stage,
Yeah.
and so therefore, learning this is also through a apprentice model. For instance, I mean, how do you appreciate good music? It's very hard to define very crisply, right? Like if somebody loves Hindustani classical music, it's very hard to define like why do you love it. But anyway, so coming back to it, there is some rational thought to it. Largely, what Subrata said, divide into two parts. One part, and just being very like straight. Team, second is market. On the team, there is some heuristics around sort of how do you identify an outlier team, right? Like not like an average team. I think the good thing which happens with us is that outside of Subrata, most of the people are like me, which are like average, average intelligence. And you meet a lot of people with sharp intelligence, so your average intelligence goes a little bit high. And then you meet like somebody who's very sharp in that particular space, so you can identify the outlier founder. Obviously, you need to be like able to keep your eyes and ears open and be there in that room, right? Like, but you can identify like an outlier founder who understands the business really well, who can articulate what he's doing, etc., etc. He or she, and then there is this market opportunity, which is it's easier, it's relatively easier in some cases where there is a bounded problem. For instance, in terms of insurance, you know how big the insurance market is, you know how it's growing, so you know maybe like 10 years down the road, like how it's going to be. But there are some cases where, you are like Flipkart and there is no e-commerce in India. And, you have to basically flip a coin to figure out like how big it will be in, say, 10 years down the road. So there are those opportunities. Or like a Facebook, where, you have no clue what the business is and then it becomes Facebook. But some of those bets can be more like weighted towards the founder, because the founder is like, hey, I fixed the code while you are drinking in a pub, right? Like, and the code is fixed. So it's basically, identifying an outlier team and a great neighborhood space where, a large opportunity, large business can be created. And it is, we do this on a regular basis. So we have like 300 portfolio companies. So on the execution side, we have a sense of sort of what works, what doesn't work, what go-to-market works, what doesn't work, etc. So there is some sense of even capturing that opportunity, right? Whether you can build a B2B insurance company in this day and age in India, we would maybe have a sense on that.
So just to add to what Abhinav was saying, on the team evaluation, I actually heavily invest on reference checking, and because in the end, the Flipkart days are gone. You have to make a decision after 1 or 2 meetings. So how much can you figure out, in 40 minutes times 2, right? So it is very, very critical to be able to ask the right questions to people that this team or founders or founding team have spent years and years together working with. And how well you can structure that conversation actually gives a lot of insights. So and we are trying to get better at it all the time. But if Varun gives an insight into somebody, we'll obviously treat that very seriously versus somebody that we don't even know that well, right? So how do we get our networks to give us signals about, let's say, some of the important things that are very important for us, which is how is this person going to behave in adverse situations? How is this person going to behave when, they're trying to build a team from 0 to 1? Or, if they have a certain size of product and team, and if they have to go from 1 to 10, would the behavior change? So some of these things, there are very, very appropriate hints that you can get by talking to the right people who may have worked with this set of people before.
We find it terribly hard to even take even box decisions within the product. So I can imagine how hard that would be. The next question, sort of more with the times, we continue to, over the last I would say maybe a quarter and a half, saying, it's Armageddon time for startups, and funding's drying out, and we've again hit that cycle of layoffs, which at least personally I've seen back twice, once a little bit in COVID. That was more in preparation of a really bad time, maybe, and I think I've seen one back in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, where we had this. The whole deluge of housing and, a bunch of other, and this sort of continues to, repeat every 2 to 3 years. So where do, just an advice to us and the team here and just for all of us, where do startups generally go wrong? Because this seems to happen fairly frequently, but as a community, we don't seem to learn, or what goes wrong, according to you?
I'll take it. Okay. See, there are specific cases. See, all the specific cases.
We're making broad generalizations.
Yeah, specific cases where companies go wrong. Usually, what I found is, typically companies implode from within, which is, teams not getting along well, and I'm talking about like something which is not very large. So maybe, early stage business not able to get to like $10 million in revenue, right? So mostly, in most cases, in almost all markets, one should be able to get to some reasonable size and scale, irrespective of the size of the opportunity, because, there'll be some opportunity because somebody's invested. But usually it is, teams not able to work together, or there is, so that's one, that's a big reason. Second big reason is, there is disparate focus, So maybe the invert of it, let me just say that. So I think the reason why startups win, and they win when the odds are absolutely against them. For instance, like let's take Varun's example, right? So Varun has a going company which has raised capital, etc., but he wanted to start another company. He wanted to raise $40 million, $30 million at the start. There are no customers, there are no employees.
And domestic capital.
And domestic capital. And initially there are no investors also, right? So basically, nobody wants to invest in you. Nobody wants to be your customer. Nobody wants to join you in the team. So basically the odds are literally like zero, right? Like there's very, very minuscule odds. The reason you see startups winning in this kind of odd, right? Like is just sharp focus. There is this guy who knows what he's doing. He's very clear about the goal. And he's trying to make things happen. Like just make this happen, right? That's all. And he's able to over time figure out a solution because there's very sharp focus about this. And unfortunately, as companies become large, or even in smaller companies, there is this loss of focus where we don't know what we're doing. And there is this disparate ways in which people are running around, but there's no cohesive way or direction in which we want to run. And that's a big reason as well, in which sort of things fall apart. So those would be, I would say, top two reasons.
Yeah, I mean, at least even in my observation, mostly it is team related, right? So if either the dynamics doesn't work out, or you are sort of starting to pull in different directions, or just plain you don't agree on if this is an important problem to solve at all or not. So those are sort of the level 0 kind of problems. Then if you get to a certain size and then want to scale to so let's say that 0 to 1 versus the 1 to 10, there it could be, a lot of it has to be with respect to, is the team kind of geared towards scale? And you have to almost flip a switch saying that you'll be able to kind of take this thing that has started to work and now do absolutely everything possible to take it to as many people as possible. And sometimes what happens is the founding team is so geared towards figuring out the best product that they forget that there is this other thing that they have to do, which is whatever you have to start taking it to the market, right? So that could be the next stage of failure. But largely, if you get through these two, you'll probably get to some reasonable state anyways.
Yeah, at least what at ACKO we've been trying to do, and where we see is always sort of question ourselves, is not to spread ourselves too thin. Because when we get access to capital, there's always this temptation to launch the next category, to saying you feel you can win it, and it's also a little bit of bias because you won one or two battles, you feel you can win the next one, and that kind of stretches you too thin. At least we look at it in a way, we don't know whether that's right or wrong. Sometimes it's played reverse. Personally, like as a team, I can admit I think we are almost a year late on health insurance. We should have, been there. Don't know what's the right balance, but what we are very wary of as a team is to not end up spreading ourselves, fairly thin. Because when we see outside data points, it's like there are 6 businesses in one business, right? The minute maybe you've crossed $400-500 valuation, you've raised more than $100 million, there's a lending, there's lots of things happening. And we still find it hard to make auto successful. So, but there's a little bit of balance. We don't know what the right one is, but hopefully we get it right and don't spread ourselves too thin. Okay, last question before we move to a fun segment, which is going to be like a coffee with Karan style, quick rapid fire, where no diplomatic answers are allowed.
We have not been diplomatic.
Yeah. What advice would you give all the young, bright folks here in terms of building their careers, or tomorrow wanting to be startup founders, or what's the right advice in this hot talent market where people are flipping jobs and there's always a counter offer for smart people? What advice would you give them as wanting to be future founders or just building great careers?
I think I just have one good advice. Actually, 1.5 good advice. One I'll tell you. So the first one is very simple. Work with really good people, and you define what good is for you. But 10 years working with good people will compound a lot. So work with good people. And the other half advice is be in good books of Varun if you're leaving, because he'll give the reference.
Yeah, absolutely important, especially the younger guys, right? If you get the right mentor, it can actually change that, the steepness of the curve, the learning curve, very, very abruptly. And that's what you want. I mean, as a young person getting into either this company or this industry, you just want to soak in everything. I mean, just be like a child. Right? So if you don't know how to run, still try to run, and then maybe you'll get knocked down, but you have to get up and run again. So I think that innate hunger to sort of be curious, be differentiated, be helpful, all of that is actually very, very essential in the early stage of the career. Before you get old and boring like me. You need to kind of get to this point where you've tried almost everything that you had to try and do it as quickly as possible. There is no time limit on life, right? So just try and do everything that is outrageous as quickly as you can, and let somebody else come and tell you that it is outrageous before you stop doing it. I would say that's probably point number 1. And point number 2 is really feel like you're enjoying what you're doing. And I keep talking about Virat Kohli, who came and told us this one thing, which is the statement was, I hope you love what you're doing because I do what I am loving, right? So make sure that you are at least in one of those two camps, and they're not very different, right? So make sure, and if you feel like ACKO isn't the place that you're getting really, really happy doing what you're doing, you should probably do something else, right? And it could be come to Varun and say, here is a crazy way to change insurance in India. So let me do a pilot to show you that I can do it better than ACKO, or whatever it is, right? So these two things, be as curious as possible, and then make sure that you are liking every minute of your stay and everything that you're doing.
That's good advice. And one of the other things, just as a data point, not even, this whole startup ecosystem, which is supposed to create wealth and give you great learning, working on new stuff, at least from whatever success India has seen, where people have made, wealth out of being in a company, is the guys who've probably like Abhinav, the word that you used, compounded and solved that company's problems over 5 years, 10 years. Whether we, flipped every 2, 3 years, because just a simple math, which I try to tell the team, is that if you flip every 2, 3 years, nothing's going to ever vest, and even if the company does well, nothing's going to ever compound. So if you feel you're in the right space and the company is going to do well, if you solve that company's problems over a decade or maybe 5 to 7 years, that's how long it takes to probably crack one market. Those are the folks that end up creating the most outcomes, both commercially and the reputations to probably even go and start their own companies. It's hard to convey that message though. Okay, should we move to the fun segment, the rapid fire?
I thought this was a fun segment.
No.
Can we shoot a few to you as well?
Okay, maybe in the end.
So please give me some questions, guys.
Okay, should we go? Who should we go with first? We have separate 5 questions each for Abhinav and Subrata. Okay. So, okay, Subrata, question 1. Where do you shop more from, Amazon or Flipkart?
Clearly Amazon, because I don't want Flipkart to be losing money on me.
Name 2 categories or sectors, subsectors, of course we are talking within the tech ecosystem, that according to you are likely to do very, very well in the foreseeable future, and 2 that are going to struggle, according to you.
See, I think if you take an India lens, I mean, there is so much automation left that almost everything will do well if you can automate it properly. But the last few investments I've made continue to be in consumer, so I believe in consumer. And then in Web3, just trying to cut my teeth there. So I have actually done one investment in a Web3 company. So I would pick these 2. And they're evergreen, it will continue to do well, in my opinion, for the next 10 years.
Got it. Are you bullish or bearish on crypto?
Bullish. Take a guess.
You have to be. Name 2 companies that you regret not investing in.
I mean, probably Dream11 is one. I probably don't have, maybe delivery, but we had e-cards, so 1.5.
Okay, so Dream11 and maybe the logistics. Yeah.
Yeah.
A product you love using as a consumer.
I mean, obviously WhatsApp.
Okay. Safe answer. Okay, one within the companies that you've invested in.
ACKO. But I wish someday it will become like WhatsApp.
Sure. Vish, can we make that happen?
On it.
Okay, we move to Abhinav. Yeah,
That was-
just 5 questions each.
Okay, cool.
Abhinav, if you were to quit being a VC and start a company, what space would it be in?
It'll be a fund.
It'll be a fund. No, let's talk outside investing.
I have not thought about this. So maybe something in crypto.
Okay. I think we should do something about crypto.
Can you insure crypto?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out, can we insure NFTs?
Okay, that's a start.
Yeah. Name your most admired VC firm outside of Accel.
That's a trick question, man. See, in terms of what they've done, I think Benchmark is really good. The firm Benchmark.
Benchmark's not hardly doing anything here, so
Oh, you want an India fund?
ideally. Yeah.
I think Subrata. Easier.
I mean, I really love this guy, Leaf Excel. He doesn't
Yeah.
invest in India anymore.
Yeah.
But from somebody who was sitting in New York and looking at India, I think he got more right than we did.
Yeah, he figured out India sitting millions of miles away.
Yeah, and probably, you don't want the noise and you want the right signals, and he somehow figured out to get the right signals. Yeah. So, amazing.
Yeah. We should get him back to India.
Get him back.
I don't think he's coming back in a hurry.
Your favorite non-Accel startup?
Startup.
Yeah.
These are difficult questions. When you ask easy one to Subrata. uh, I like Vidit as a founder. So
Misho.
Misho. Yeah,
Okay.
as a founder. I don't use Misho though, but
Yeah.
it's a different answer. But
Okay. One thing you hate about being a VC.
very, 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 very long feedback cycles. So which means if you invest today, you will not know for like 10 years that, this is really good. And am I like really good at this or not? So it's a very, very long feedback. In a code push, you know the code is breaking, or in a business, like in a year or so, people will come and tell you. In a VC, you don't know.
Also, it means for 10 years you can go to a pub without worrying. Figure it out later.
That's what's been happening, yeah.
Which founder trait you look for most? One specific trait. And which trait makes you run away?
I think the same thing. The first thing, and it's not like it's an entry criteria of sorts. I like to make sure that the founder is fit. Fit.
Physically?
Both physically and mentally.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, and this is a reason, this is not like an innocuous answer. It's just, it is a reason. I mean, this is a hard thing you do. It's a 10-year journey. And it's perhaps the most difficult thing that one can do. And so you better be like fit. And it is both physically as well as sort of mentally in the right zone.
Got it. And a trait that just the antithesis of
This is the anti of this.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else with any rapid fire question? I'm done with notes that I have.
Why don't you ask your favorite questions to Varun?
We need to solicit some questions from the.
No, they've heard me enough today.
Varun, CoverFox versus ACKO, was the right reason that Abhinav told, or was there something else? Rapid
I
fire.
think, yeah.
Okay.
Don't
think.
80%, yes. 80%. 20% there were other reasons, but 80% I would say, yeah. I didn't think that would be a large enough change or outcome. Yeah.
What is, in 2030, if you're sitting here,
Yeah.
how would ACKO look like?
I'd hopefully want to be on a beach, and some of these guys here. Like, I'd love for some of these guys to probably be.
But in terms of business, like, what do you think?
In terms of business, I think for us, what we continue to look at is that insurance is phase one. When you look at broader financial services, they're always a trust game because you park your money with somebody for years and years. If we get, I think in the next couple of years, insurance right, and I don't know whether it takes us 3, 5, 10, we're not in a hurry. But 8, 10 years out, if we've got these two right, I think the world is our oyster after that, whether we want to do savings, we want to do banking, whatever it is that we want to do. It's hard to build consumer trust in financial services. If we get insurance right, I think the world is.
But in terms of like, I force you to put a number to it.
In terms of valuation?
Something like revenue, GWP, like how big do you want to be?
2030.
8 years. We give you 8 years.
8 years, I think at least about 2.5 billion, 2 to 3 billion.
Yeah, that's like maybe like a $10 billion. Business.
Sanjeev, am I right? For all the planning that we are doing? Yeah? Yeah.
That's like a $10+ billion business.
Yeah. From this year, where we'll probably be about 300 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. 300, we should be 10 times. If not 10, maybe 7, 8 times.
Yeah. So that's one of the largest companies in India.
No, I just don't say this ambitiously or with sort of naivete that we should get there. I think our business is of a compounding nature.
Yes.
So we will continue to compound. So even 30-40% fresh growth that like any business would aspire to do actually gives you 70% growth just because of the math of this business, right? You will continue to compound. And the kind of products we sell are the world's oldest subscription products. LTVs, 20-year annuities, right? People will continue to buy health insurance. They pay year on year. The older they get, the more they pay. So that compounding and all products that we sell are largely annuity kind of revenue products. I don't see why the compounding won't happen.
Yeah. And just want to make sure that people get this. There is a realistic chance that this business can be, that large. Most businesses can't be $10 billion businesses. The opportunity set is not that large. Thankfully, ACKO is in an opportunity set which is that large. And it is possible to create that kind of a business.
Yeah, and one more thing I think which is critical and the way we look at it is, I'd hate to be in a world, given how big tech is or how overpowering the reach and hold on consumers and is that you are in games which or in areas where big tech is either interested or it's trying to make a foray, or it's duopoly situations, an Amazon versus Flipkart, it's a Swiggy versus Zomato, it's an Uber versus Ola. You can, in the business that we are in, you can build nice compounding billion, 2 billion, still be 5% of the market. It's not a winner takes all. You can grow at your own pace. You can decide which markets you want to do, you don't want to do. The market's not running away. If in those kind of businesses which I just spoke about, one win the other loses, that's not the case with us. You can build it at your own pace and it's just not going away. These are 20-30 billion dollar markets growing at 25% CAGR for the next, I don't think we'll be able to scratch the surface in our lifetime.
So, okay, one last question from me. So let's say an ACKO customer is talking to somebody who doesn't know about ACKO. What would you want him or her to say?
आंख बंद करके ले लो.
Okay, that's a good
On
one.
that great note.
Okay, we'll just 5 more minutes. We will have maybe 3 or max 4 questions from the audience. So anyone who sort of wants to go can raise their hand, and we can get the mic. Okay.
So sometimes we also get opportunity to invest in startups in a very small way, right? So my question is whether we should really pursue that or not as an investment opportunity, and in case we want to evaluate at our level, what are the things that we should look at to decide whether to invest or not?
So we have this thing called Accel Atoms. Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of Accel song and dance here. Accel Atoms is a program where we invest into early stage startups and a small amount of money. But we really want to work with the ecosystem, so angel investors, to who we think and the founders think can actually help the company along the way. So I would at least encourage you to look into Atoms and see if there is something that we could do together. But I think it goes back to, are you doing this to create a return, or are you doing this for passion? And then the answer could be a little bit different. So when I do my personal investment, it is generally all for passion. I see a friend who is kind of trying to solve a problem which is interesting and may or may not be anything that I know, or things like that. I mean, I try to do that. But in the end, it'll be early stage companies, those same things that we talked about, right? And a decent market opportunity. Can you believe in these founders? Do you really believe that they can build the team and kind of create a differentiated opportunity in that space?
Anyone else? Yeah, sorry, we didn't do that. That's Biresh Hidar actually. Can you introduce yourself
Yeah.
before you ask the question? Yeah.
Sure. I'm Sujay. I work with the central team. I'm a lead UI engineer, right? So what I wanted to ask about was, especially nowadays, I think since last 4 or 5 months, there has been talk about, startup ecosystem shrinking a bit. There is some fear mongering ki the bubble is going to burst, so things like that. So what is your opinion around that?
So I don't know how many bursts I've lived through. Okay, so I built a company when 9/11 happened in the US. Then 2007 when 2008 when we were raising the first Accel fund. I think in the history of Accel, one investor, what we call a limited partner, had backed out after making a commitment. So that happened because of the financial crisis. And then, Varun talked about a few. So 2-3 things. I mean, in a situation like this is probably the best time to build a company, because most of the people will be very, very focused on what we are building, as opposed to go compare with 5 other companies all the time. So you have this runway, whatever time there is, to build something which is like really, really good. And then generally when the bust ends and you know, these cycles keep happening, the companies that worked really well, solved for their problems during the bust, actually comes out on top in a much, much meaningful way. And you know, companies like Google, and you talk about it, they have all been you know, through multiple down cycles, and every time they come out stronger. So just treat this as an opportunity where there is less distraction, and continue to build what you think will be the really, you know, winning category defining company here.
Yeah, we have one question here.
Hi, Subrata and Abhinav, thank you for your time, first of all. Thank you, it was really insightful. Both of you mentioned this, and I think I just wanted to pick your brains. Web3 and cryptos. You know, what excites you about them?
I mean, you know what Web 2 became, right? So these large internet companies, I mean, I think Varun was alluding to them. They are sitting with, you know, all the personal data, and they keep saying, right? I mean, if you are not paying for a product, you are the product. So that's, you know, at least somewhat true in that realm. So I saw in Web3 the first opportunity where, you know, in a distributed manner, people can take ownership of what they want to build and what is important and so on and so forth. So I think that's sort of the central thing. And now, obviously, it has to be guarded and built in the right way. So there is this proof of stake versus, you know, all of that. So if it becomes too skewed towards people who have more money to wager, then we'll probably end up being in that wrong camp again. So how do you build it out from here on forward will be important. And that's some of the things that actually kind of, you know, makes me more excited that there are these kinds of opportunities which were not there probably in Web 2 that will open up in Web 3. And plus just the, you know, blockchain infrastructure, there are potentially a lot of usages of that. And as a computer science guy, I'm just kind of excited to see what can come out of it.
Yeah, and similar stuff. But I think, you know, see, we are investors, and in some sense, we don't have a magic wand in our hand that we'll know for sure something will work or not. But if you were to think of input variables as to sort of what's happening, we're seeing a lot of talent going in that direction. So there is always a good input criteria where we see a high talent density into that market. We are seeing a lot of consumers, a lot of people on those platforms. So it's not like 5 million, 10 million, it's like hundreds of millions of people on those platforms. We're seeing reasonable market cap. Obviously, these market caps keep fluctuating as we talk also because, you know, they're always live. But it's not insignificant. It's large. It's hundreds of billions of dollars, right? So it's large. So if you just like zoom out and see, are people there? Are people using the product? Are people like are the right set of people building cool products there or not? Like the answer to all those questions is yes. There's infrastructure which is being created, which is pretty nifty actually. And he's a computer. Unfortunately, I also studied computer science, which I never used, but it's very nice and very cool. And so there is a possibility of creating, you know, very nice use cases on top of it. So I think that excites us. And as sort of you know, early stage investors, we are always excited by the sort of the new world, right? The new opportunity, and that's where the most outlier businesses come from. So maybe that's the pull.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? Oh, okay. There's one there. Okay, last one.
Hi. So how would you describe yourself as a financial investor or a strategic investor? I mean, which one would be better?
You know, we internally keep discussing that in most companies where, and I don't even think I'm an investor, you know, so that's my impression of myself. I feel like I'm a small co-founder in most companies where we have invested early. So that's the kind of relationship that I want to build. with the team and management, and if you talk about any of the companies, so Mitra, where we put in the first $100,000 into Mukesh Bansal, and then we have invested with him a second time, and then we are co-investors with him in a bunch of other opportunities. So I don't necessarily call myself either a strategic or a financial investor, but it's almost like this company building kind of love for company building and seeing those come to fruition.
I think I'm slightly different from Shubhrato. When I joined Shubhrato, I thought it was like, and so Shubhrato is basically, IIT Kanpur, computer science, PhD from the US, so he's pretty academic that way. So I almost thought I'm joining a lab where a professor is running experiments and he gets to do pay really, really well if the experiments do well. My thing is slightly different. I really like to work with really good people, and that's it. And that's the passion. And if I find really cool people, and the job provides us an opportunity to work with really smart people. And why would you do something else if you have the opportunity to do this?
So it's more about the synergies, maybe?
Yeah, maybe it's less to do with financial or strategic. It's more to do with, we meet people who are building something cool, which is going to be, other people will discover in 10 years or 5 years or something, right? And so you're always talking to this really, really smart group of people who are, who can be very nice people also to work with. So it's just that energy and that opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, and because we have another small session to go, I don't know how we're going to fit all this, but a big thank you to Subrata and Abhinav. First investors, our most solid backers, and I can tell you each time ACKO's had a bit of trouble or I've been a little unsure about what to do, I think my first phone call goes to them. So they're friends of ACKO more than investors in ACKO, and a big thank you to them for coming down.